when the nighttime hit, Bryce and I would go around charging Lime scooters for spare cash.
You guys did that?
I
ran those people.
Because we'd be here.
He did Uber.
Yeah. We were those guys. All right, my tiny apartment living room was just like 30 freaking scooters. My girlfriend hated me so bad.
And they all strobe green, and so you walk into your living room and it looked like an alien spaceship. It would just be strobing and pulsing green lights. On paper and all this, we're entrepreneurs and we're living the dream. And then at night we're sprinting around Dirty Six to collect scooters at $8 a pop to charge them in our living rooms.
Well, first, I have to thank you guys so much for allowing me to be in this establishment to do this show. It means a lot to me, and I do not take it for granted, so thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you.
So, how did you guys survive Snowpocalypse 2.0 2022?
Very well.
Wasn't that bad? It wasn't as bad as last year, right?
No, it wasn't that bad. We even opted to open up that Thursday.
You did.
Even
Thank you very
most
much.
places were closed. Yeah, you were here having a beer. That was cool. Yeah, it was just one of those things. We did close early because we felt like we didn't want to be sending any guests or staff home after dark, given the ice. So we kind of closed up early because of that. But otherwise, it was business as usual.
Yeah, I was even brewing that day. It's totally fine.
Yeah, it smelled awesome in here.
Well, you guys are from Michigan, so you're kind of used to the ice and snow and all that.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay.
Yeah, Snowpocalypse 1.0. We even did like some Midwestern tow service type stuff. I drove around and pushed people out of the snow for a little bit, helping them get back on the road.
You brave soldiers of snow.
Yeah.
Now Austin is kind of dealing with a new issue, is the boil water that we have to do now. Apparently the first one that I realized happened was back in like 2018. And now we're in, I don't know what the issue is now, but how does that affect your guys' business? Or does it at all?
Luckily, on the beer production front, I mean, he could talk to that, but from the service and taproom section, it's just a change in protocol. So like we typically rinse our glasses before we pour into them. We can't do that. Yeah. We do coffee, and we had to shut down our coffee operations because the machines don't keep the water hot long enough to sanitize it. So a few operational changes, but nothing nuts. And then on the beer side?
Yeah, beer side's normal. I mean, the water gets, used in the brewing process is going to be boiled regardless, so it's all until it doesn't business as usual.
I mean, that boil is an hour or something typically for a brew, so they say like 2 minutes it needs to boil, so it's plenty sterilized. We actually get a lot of people reaching out asking us to boil water in bulk and get it out to the community, which we did in the first one, and now I think we have a restaurant that we sell our beer to who was curious about us boiling water, kegging it off so they could have a water on tap. So, we do what we can.
And we're gonna do, last time this happened, we supplied a bunch of water for St. Ed's University. So,
as I mentioned earlier, you guys are from Michigan. What was it like growing up there?
Very different. It's an interesting city. It's not like Austin, where every day you're like, oh, a new building's going up. That's interesting. Like Detroit is on the decline. It's been for a while, and so there's like a grittiness there that the people are proud of. But it's sometimes a tough place, I think, for small businesses to flourish. But it's a beautiful state. The wilderness and the fishing and the water activities are absolutely breathtakingly beautiful in the summertime. The people are some of the best people ever. I think that's where we get kind of our friendly disposition and kind of like that Midwestern friendliness that I think kind of came into our service model here. Even as a business, it kind of is a fundamental of, I think, what this brand stands for is kind of like just the values that we grew up on.
I assume your family's still there?
Yeah, most of our family still there.
Yeah, good portion. All the grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc. And then our mom actually lives in San Diego, so our parents are split.
Okay.
And so we actually split half of our life living and growing up in San Diego. So and that was a wildly different experience.
Okay.
And I think that was kind of the basis for him and I starting to really enjoy traveling, because we grew up flying back and forth between Michigan and California. seeing the differences in the foods that people ate and the culture and everything about it. And that was kind of the start, I think, we would start taking road trips back and forth in the summertime, stopping places, and then it grew into so much more.
In one of the interviews that I watched, you worked for General Motors.
Yeah, fresh out of college. Very, very different. I was going to work every day in a full suit, negotiating contracts for their powertrain division.
What was your
old
official
school
title?
business. Procurement specialist. Okay. Yeah, and program purchasing buyer. So a fancy term for a guy. I sourced aluminum die-cast products for their powertrains, and that was like my niche. And so I'd travel all around, going to automotive plants, auditing processes, seeing how they were building parts, and then basically like lowballing suppliers.
Was that interesting to you at the time?
It was interesting. It was a really interesting dive into how a large corporation operates with all the internal processes and like a super robust training program. And so I took advantage of all that. They had like full-on GM universities, what they called it. You go to this place and you can sign up for classes to learn about all kinds of different technical concepts. It was awesome. It was really, really fascinating, but ultimately it showed me that I didn't want to work in a large corporate environment because every single thing you did had to have an approval by a manager. And so you were always running things up the flagpole, and then approvals came down, and sometimes you'd think something would be a home run and they'd just tell you no, flat out. And having that type of restriction was just not...
Soul crushing, right?
Soul crushing, yeah.
And Bryce, around that same time, Daniel was working at General Motors. Yeah. What were you doing, or what job were you at?
I took about a year and a half off to go travel, and I was living in Budapest, Hungary. It's kind of where I ultimately ended up as like my home base. Just working at a small hostel, taking people around the city, showing them what's what, meeting a ton of travelers, and it was a pretty eye-opening experience. Yeah.
And how much of that experience did that influence some of the beers you craft?
Oh man, I can definitely think of a few from those travels. So one of them's like it's called Floating Market. It's a pineapple basil saison, Thai basil saison, kind of inspired by his time I spent in Thailand. Okay. And then another one called Split 2 Havar, which was kind of modeled off this beer we had when we were both in Croatia. In that area, everyone is going for like the German style, real traditional kind of beers. And like the further you get away from Germany, people still have that German like inspired stuff going on, but you get a little bit more wild flavors out there. And it was really cool just to see like how regional differences impact the beer making. Yeah.
But that beer in particular was just kind of fun. It was inspired by this beer that we had in this little brew pub that we stumbled across when we were in Croatia, and it didn't really fit an exact style guideline, I think, but Bryce and I always talked about how great it was, and it quickly entered the list as I think it was the first beer we ever brewed.
It was, yeah. Yeah, it was. First beer on the system. Yeah.
And even the name is reminiscent of that. It's named after the two cities that we were traveling in between at the time, Split, which is a coastal city in Croatia, and then
Hvar's a little island.
A little island off the coast. And so we were actually on our way from Split to Hvar Island, and we stopped in this little pub. And so, a lot of our beers have direct influence. And that's kind of the dream for this place. Yeah. That's why it's called Nomadic, is there's so much great beer out there, so many cool experiences, and like we want to experience them all and share them with our customers here in Austin.
And you do a great job at that, I might say. And so speaking of an experience, what was the first beer you guys ever tried? And this is the type of beer that your dad may give you, your stepdad may give you, like, here, try this, so I can look at the disgusted face you have.
Oh man.
Mine was, I think it was Coors Original.
Oh yeah, ours has got to be PBR. Yeah, PBR. For sure. My great grandfather is like die-hard PBR fan.
Yeah. Before it was like hipster cool, he had cases of PBR stacked in his garage. Yeah. And that was probably it. Or maybe like a nice Budweiser out by the grill with my dad growing up, and me just being like, why do you drink that?
Yeah. The king of beers. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
But the first like craft beer I think I had was probably, I know for sure, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, which is usually like the gateway craft beer for everyone. It's great. Yeah.
Same for you, Sierra Nevada?
Hands down. Yeah. Sierra Nevada Pale was it.
Got it. Yeah.
So you guys did some traveling, and then Bryce, you ended up in San Francisco. What did you? Is that where? Was that the city that taught you about beer and how to make it?
Yeah. In college, I was still really passionate about beer, and I was home brewing and making awful stuff. I did not know how to do it well. And it turns out on a homebrew scale level, you just can't get the professional quality unless you invest in a ton of equipment. But at that point, you're basically like a small brewery at your house, right? So, and I also, you can read books about processes, but until you get someone to show you the ropes, it's a little harder to do. So I ended up working my way up at a brewery out there called 4 Point Beer Company.
And did you like show up there just, hey, I want to learn how to make beer? You guys hiring?
Yeah, and basically was like, they're like, we don't have any jobs available, but if you want to come volunteer and wash kegs for us, I'd be like, all right, cool. Wow. So 1-2 days a week, go in there and wash kegs and scrub the drains and sweep them off the floors and do all the basic work that they can trust someone who doesn't know what they're doing to do.
Did you feel awkward going in there doing that?
No, I loved it. No, I was so excited to learn about like how to become a brewer, and I really wanted to be a professional brewer.
How old were you at that time?
22.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just above age.
Yeah.
And you can choose to answer this question or not, but how old were you guys when you brewed your first beer?
Oh, I was definitely 18 in college. Yeah.
Out of necessity.
Yeah, because as you said, there is no age restriction to make your own beer.
No. Yeah, you can go to the homebrew store and buy the stuff.
And how did you guys learn to do that? Through the internet, through, I don't know, online recipes, through a library?
I bought a book just titled How to Brew. By John Palmer, and that's kind of where he started. And then a lot of internet forums and things about what people were doing on home. I mean, there's tons of homebrew websites and magazines to kind of check out. So.
Did you guys travel separately at some point during your lives?
A little bit, yeah. We traveled a lot when we were in our late teens, early 20s together, road tripping around the country.
And so when did you guys reconvene to talk about starting your own brewery business?
2016. I was living back in San Diego. I'd quit General Motors and was working for a small to mid-sized tech company that was experiencing a lot of growth. And Bryce was up in San Francisco brewing for 4 Point Brewing Company. And we were both ready for a career change. We figured, I think we'd always wanted to start a brewery and be entrepreneurial. And at that point, we started having calls. And before we knew it, there was a shared Google Doc that we would put stuff into, and we'd have a regular weekly call and go, okay, I figured out how to finance the brewery and how we're gonna handle marketing. What do we think we need to figure out this week? And we'd give ourselves a list of tasks, and we'd work on them, and then we'd reconvene the next week. And I don't know, we did that for about 7 months before I think we had a fully formed business plan and we're ready to start pitching investors.
Okay.
And how many no's did you get before you got a yes?
I don't know. I think the first
a decent amount. We probably sent this out to like 50 people maybe.
Yeah.
And a handful said yes.
Was it a humbling experience, I take it?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You have this idea of your business it's gonna be so great and everyone's gonna wanna.
Yeah, they're gonna love it as much as we do.
Yeah, but that's not the case usually.
And it's a good lesson, and some people just aren't in the right space. Maybe they really want to be a part, but they got their own goals for their life, and those no's are not rejections of you as a human. They're just a rejection of, hey, not right now for me. I don't want to put money into your potential brewery.
How did you not take it personally? How did you learn to not take it personally?
It's just business. I don't know.
I think after, you get past the first or second no, and then you're like, okay. It is what it is. And then the ones after that are just that's fine, yeah, move on. It's all good. Okay. Yeah.
You guys put in plan this idea. When did you settle on Austin being the place to open up shop, and what were some other close, cities that you even considered opening up?
It started off with just this idea that we were taking money from our friends and family and ex-coworkers and people that we cared about. The idea of losing their money was not something we were okay with. We knew this needed to be successful. So, the first step was we made a list of 20 or so cities that were we live in those places. And then I studied marketing, so I just dove into census data, different statistics from the Brewers Association websites, and we identified 4 or 5 really hot markets that we thought we might want to be in. And then it was a no-brainer to pick Austin. I was like, Austin's awesome. The community is incredible with the art scene and the community's just love of small business. It just made sense. So we just picked up and headed over here. But I think we looked at, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Salt Lake City. I think even Reno was on there at one point because it's actually kind of growing. A bunch of weird cities that you wouldn't think of. And then Austin is just so cool. We just had to come here.
And at the time, there was, the breweries per capita, so we're way lower than most large cities.
So at that time, for example, San Diego in the county had as many breweries as the entire state of Texas, to put that in perspective. Yeah. So as a market, Texas was just exploding. And the reason for that was up until I believe it was 2014 or 15, tap rooms were not actually allowed to sell direct to customers. A lot of old craft beer fans may remember going to a brewery, buying a souvenir glass that came with tokens that then gave you free pours. And that's how they had to sell beers. And so it made it very hard for a small brew pub like ours to actually make money selling beer. Yeah. And so when that changed, it allowed this market to just open up and become this thing. And so craft beer was so much further behind in Texas at that point than a lot of other states.
I have a few buddies who had just a dozen glasses from the same brewery because of the tokens. They're just Anyway, is it a good thing that Austin is growing with the tech industry? And do you feel like that might push out some small businesses?
Oof. That's a good question. I know how I feel about it. I don't know how you feel.
I was in San Francisco for that second tech boom they had. And I did see a lot of smaller places close just because, this is the classic story. Rents get a lot higher and small businesses have a hard time making it. I think that's just the way the world works though. And some places are gonna get hot and some places are not. And I think as a business, you need to be able to adapt, and if it's time to close up, it's a bummer because it does detract from the overall, feeling of the city. But, cities change just like us people do and that kind of thing.
It's kind of heartbreaking to hear that Spider House closed down. I don't know if you've heard. That was, it was a staple here in Austin. And it sucks to see those businesses go. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree with you guys completely. It's a shame when you see the landscape of your city change and some beloved institutions close their doors. But having gone to school in Michigan and lived in the Detroit area, I can say that the opposite, a city that's slowly creeping into decay, it's tough. The people there have a grittiness because there's not all the money in the world to go around. And so to make a name for yourself as a new small business is very, very tough. And so there's not as much entrepreneurship there. I think being here, now I may never be able to afford a house in Austin because of the tech boom, but I'm happy I have a business here because there is opportunity and there's people who are here, jobs are being created, and there's people with money to spend. And so I'd much rather take this over the latter.
So we get to opening up Nomadic. Were your parents concerned, or was your family concerned about, how you're going to survive, how you're going to pay for rent and all this stuff and be an adult?
The funny thing is when you first tell people you're going to quit your stable salaried job to go off in an entrepreneurial venture, the first thing they say is, "Are you sure? You got a good thing going right now, you really want to blow all that up?" And then as soon as you quit your job, some of those same people come back and they go, I wish I did what you're doing. I'm so excited for you. And it's funny, people just care, but I think our parents were some of the most supportive. We have that like mom that's like the cheerleader mom who's like, you can do anything you want. She just loves us to death, and she was like our biggest fan throughout all of this.
And you bought her van, right?
I do. I drive that as my personal vehicle and as a delivery vehicle.
It's very spacious.
It is spacious. We actually took a road trip across country. We did a month-long road trip in it when we were like 19, 20. We drove from San Diego up to Vancouver along the California coastline, and then we went across through Glacier National Park and all around the country in it. So it has a lot of storied heritage, but it is it's about to just cease to exist. It's on its last leg.
Once you let your ego go, it becomes very versatile. You can haul lumber and all your gear.
Yeah, definitely.
What was it like working with the city of Austin as far as like rules and regulations and licensing fees and all that stuff? Was it a pretty easy process, or was it difficult?
There were moments that were difficult. In terms of like where we could do this brewery, the zoning laws are pretty old in terms of for breweries. So we had to go into like industrial areas. Unless you run a full restaurant, they consider that less of manufacturing, more restaurant space at that point. But timeline for getting things done here was, pretty intense and long. So, they don't even approve the plans for 3 to 4 months after you submit them. So you're just hanging, paying rent, and just waiting before you can even do any demo work.
My anxiety is skyrocketing right now just thinking of that. Yeah,
it's a big check every month.
But would you say it's good stress in a way, since it's kind of your dream?
Yeah, I think it's good stress. It's one of those things, though. Luckily, we had some really great people on our team who had been through the process and understood the expectations for what it's going to take to get a permit through and get things built here. So we were able to sign into a lease where we knew the money wasn't going to run out during that process. And we paid for some expedited processing, which was well worth it. It saved us months of waiting. For just a fraction of the cost of the rent it would take to just sit and wait. So that was good, but it was a mixed bag.
What was a typical day like for you guys once you got the keys in hand? So like from the moment you wake up to the moment you hit the bed.
Well, this is kind of funny. So Bryce and I were working. We were trying to slow the roll of our savings out, and so a typical day is we'd probably get here. There was a lot of work that needed to be done to the facility that wasn't like a permitted trade type job. This used to be an old CrossFit gym. So all the weight racks had like steel pins coming out of the floor, and there was an old office structure, and there was old lighting, and it needed to all be stripped out so our contractors could come in and build up. And so during that time, we'd get in here and we'd work for till about 1 or so, and then the heat would be truly unbearable because there was no insulation, no air conditioning, and it would be 110 inside of this steel warehouse building. So,
and this was in like November, right?
Well, we signed the lease in January.
No, June.
It was June.
Yeah.
So it was so damn hot. So then we probably chill at the pool for a little bit, get some time in, hang out.
Had you been used to this type of heat and humidity?
I'm used to it now, but it's totally. I kind of like it sometimes, but I'm good with it. Yeah.
Do you prefer this weather over Michigan winters?
100%, 100%. Yes. Like hands down, way better. Yeah.
You finally opened up the business. What were some humbling experiences you guys encountered throughout the opening process?
I think this was part of it. It was like, as we did those demolition days and we were getting the space ready for the contractors to come in, after we were done hanging out, when the nighttime hit, Bryce and I would go around charging Lime scooters for spare cash.
You guys did that?
We did that.
I ran those people.
Because we'd be here.
He did Uber.
Oh yeah, we were those guys. All right, my tiny apartment living room was just like 30 freaking scooters. My girlfriend hated me so bad.
And they all strobe green, and so you walk into your living room and it looked like an alien spaceship. It would just be strobing and pulsing green lights. Our ladies really put up with a lot. We both did that.
Are they still with you?
They're still with us. Yeah, they believed in us.
Oh yeah.
But it's funny because here we are on paper and all this, we're entrepreneurs and we're living the dream, and then at night we're sprinting around Dirty Six to collect scooters at $8 a pop to charge them in our living rooms and then deploy them at 5:30 the next morning. It was such this polar, crazy lifestyle, and it humbles you and it just strips your ego down, and you go, anything to make this work. And so that made it easy.
I assume you used the van to haul some of those.
We did.
Dude, you use this GTI too, which is hilarious, little tiny hatchback.
I could fit 6 in there. It's
Get
incredible.
real good at stacking.
Yeah. Because we weren't taking a salary or anything for the first year.
Yeah, we stripped that out completely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you guys for your suffering, because
No problem.
so things are going great, and Nomadic is open and thriving. Would you say it's thriving?
Yes,
good.
Thankfully.
And you developed this concept on your website called Beers to a Better World.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that.
So it's kind of like a cheers to a better world, or beers to a better world. And the idea was that as a business, we're in this really unique position to make or multiply the positive environmental impacts that we can do, because every single one of our customers, when they buy something from us, are contributing to that scale. So environmental responsibility is a huge part of what we do. It gets me pumped up. Like, all of our fixtures in here are made out of reclaimed materials. We use compostable and biodegradable single-use products. We try and use as many renewable or reusable products as possible. And then during the pandemic, we came up with this idea of allowing people to recycle their plastic can toppers here on site, with the goal of finding a local place to basically remanufacture them into usable products, because it was kind of eye-opening how many plastic can toppers we started to go through when we were exclusively selling to go, when we weren't able to sell on site. And we went, holy crap, this is a ton of plastic. And we know that China's not taking as much of our plastic as they used to. So it's mainly ending up in the dump. And so we just decided to do something about it. And that program has just grown. I mean, we reuse a bunch of them. We're working with Texas State to remanufacture a bunch of it into new products. It's just kind of fun.
Let's talk about your employees and how awesome they are. Because every time I come in here, they're always so smiling and great.
Yeah, right. So the kind of where this all came from, and at the start, it was just him and I, and both of our girlfriends working here when they could. I know we owe them.
Did you pay them?
Yeah, we paid them. Yeah, we paid them. There's so much good beer and good food out in the world, right? And especially in Austin, like, everyone's making awesome beer for the most part. And what I thought was gonna really separate us from the rest of everyone is like our service and making people feel like this is their living room. Like, they're coming home from like a long day at work and they're like just gonna chill with their friends. Or, so we wanted to create that vibe, and so it comes along with the service vibe. I thought we could do a lot better than everyone else.
And so, I mean, part of that's really just, I think, we thought about what we felt when we were bartenders and waiters and how we were treated kind of disposably, because we waited tables to pay our way through college. We bartended, we've been in the industry for years. We didn't like how that was done, and then we thought about what brought us to life as entrepreneurs, and it's not knowing what your day is going to be filled with, or having the potential to maximize the things you care about. And so, like, for me, we get to do graphic design work here, we get to build furniture, we get to bartend occasionally. It's all fun. And all of our bartenders have really great skill sets. And so, like, our taproom manager actually used to do graphic design, so she does a lot of our graphic design work for posters and events. We had a bartender who loves yoga and got certified as an instructor, and we gave her a place to teach her classes. And so we try and look at are there ways that we can help people grow and maximize, the fullness of themselves within this place as well? And that comes across that they're actually happy to be here. And they like serving beer to our guests.
Yeah.
It's fun. We're definitely a full big family here.
It is fun.
Yeah.
And I definitely appreciate them as well. So we're coming to a close for this interview, but what is it like working with your brother, which I am totally jealous about because you guys get to see each other every day.
Yeah.
My brother lives in California. I get to see him maybe twice a year. So it's, what's it like working with each other?
It's really great in a way because there's nobody that I'd trust to have my back as much as him. We can expect that each person, I think we're going to give this our all and 100%. And I know sometimes in business that's tough. Sometimes partners, some don't pull the weight, same as others, but we actually have to actively kick each other out the door and be like, you don't have to be here, go home, and
take a break, dude.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I do love that.
Yeah, not to say we get in our tiffs every now and then. We can trust each other to speak each other's minds, and when we disagree, we're okay with disagreeing because that verbal altercation is a lot less intense than like a fight that we had back in the past. And so we can shoot it to each other straight. Okay. It's purely business when we're here, and that is also a huge strength because we're not tiptoeing around each other. Our feelings aren't going to get hurt because we're doing it because we want both of us to succeed.
I used to work in the firearms industry, and it was very hostile from company to company. It was like they were just talking shit about each other.
Sure.
And at the time I was working in that industry, I looked around and saw all these brewery companies collaborating with each other. And I'm like, how is that possible? How do you not see them as competition, and how do you collaborate with other breweries?
Well, I think that the basis of it, and it's kind of just been an industry thing for so long, is that...
So it's already established.
Already established. Even, Austin does a really good job at it, but I think overall, like the craft beer industry has always been, when it was first emerging, trying to be tamped down by the big corporate like microbreweries. And so the little guys had to band together from the start. Like I said, certain places do it better than others. Like Austin beer community here is just incredible. We all work together because, there's so many people moving here, and there's always going to be enough customers for how many breweries that are here. And there are cities that have so many more breweries that they all work together well too. So like it's really interesting that there's friendly competition. Like we all kind of push each other to like make better beer, or like who's gonna have the cool newer, design or whatever it is. But for the most part, like if we need something like, oh man, I'm out of this type of malt or hops, like I can call up anyone around here and be like, oh, we got you. Come over and pick it up. Instead of being like, well, they don't want to see me fail that day.
Right.
Yeah, it's really wild.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
When you're in a corporate environment, there seems to be an idea that you need a mental health break, right? Employees tend to rely on that to take a break from their corporate job and just enjoy their life. Does entrepreneurship have that mental health break? Can you afford to take that day off or 2 days off to step away?
I think you have to force yourself to do it. Yeah. But it's very different. I feel a very strong pull to always be here, always be working and improving, because, we've promised our staff and our team growth and opportunities, and like they rely on us to perform and create something for them as well. And so I feel like I always have to be here, but there is a burnout that occurs, and sometimes you do just have to walk away. But it's not the same feeling of I've been slugging it out for this corporation, making this paycheck, and now I'm leaving because I don't want to be here. It's very different, but there is a mental health component that we've had to learn the hard way. We've hit a breaking point a couple of times, just working day after day after day after day. And I think we're getting better at realizing when it's time to just step away and go, there will always be more work to be done. The job is never finished, but I gotta go.
Yeah.
So you can be your best version of yourself.
It's gotten easier to do that the longer we've been open. The first 6 months or a year, and then pandemic hit, it was challenging for us to take time off. But now it's, you know, we have a larger staff, and we've set up things in a way that allows us to have, you know, at least like, you know, occasional day off, or to take that week-long trip and see family or whatever it is. So, yeah.
And you kind of already touched on this, but what has entrepreneurship taught the both of you?
I think the biggest thing that it's taught me is that the world is and is kind of infinite in a way that, you know, we as entrepreneurs make money by solving problems, and the world has an infinite number of problems to be solved. And so if we continue to focus on solving problems, we can always do what we love, and that is super empowering to think about. And that I just had that realization a couple of weeks ago. It's like, oh man, if we just continue to meet people's needs and solve their problems they don't know they had, then we'll be okay. And that's really cool.
Well, I'm realizing this, you know, within the last like year or so. But you know, when we started this place, being an entrepreneur was about like doing everything ourselves. But the more and more I'm realizing, to do something like truly great, like you need to surround yourself with good people who are like on the same same team as you, and are you know, you're giving them opportunities to grow while they're helping you grow as a, you know, as a company as well. It's been kind of eye-opening as of really late. So
all right, so last few set of questions, these are kind of like rapid fire. I did a poll on Instagram, and so all right, first one is from Sal. All right. He asks, when will your beer be available in bars in Austin?
That's a really great question and a tough one to answer at this point. He does all the brewery expansion stuff. I don't do any of it. He's done a ton of work in the back of house to grow our ability to produce beer. We are gonna do 80% more beer volume this year versus last year, which is huge.
Pretty significant.
But that volume may be going towards a project that we're not quite ready to put on blast quite yet.
Got it.
We may be selling the beer to ourselves. Let's just say that if that somehow doesn't occur, we're about to hit the market hard.
Yeah.
So, because we got tanks and that beer needs to go somewhere, and we're about to bring it. Up until then, we actually were selling everything we made here, so there was no need to go outward. But there is one place you can get our beer. Central Standard on South Congress has our peak season IPA. And I believe they have a happy hour where you can actually get it cheaper there than here. So go hit them up and go get a peak season, yeah.
All right, Ralph asks, if you go back before opening the brewery, what advice will you give yourself?
Oh, dude, hit it.
Oh man. You know, I think the something that really stands out is raise more money than you think you need. 100%.
Seriously.
Like, I think we would have solved a lot of our headaches if we had the means to, you know, pay ourselves a little bit so we weren't killing ourselves charging scooters. Really worrying about that extra month that the permit took too long. You know, it created a lot of stress in our personal lives, and if you can like get that stress down, I think you make better decisions in the long run.
Yeah.
This is from Todd, former coworker. As a brewmaster, do you get OCD about cleaning and sterilization?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Even we're like, you know, we have a couple of people on staff here who want to, you know, do what I did and start, you know, trying their hand at production or brewing, and I'm like, okay, no, you want to hold the clamp just like, no, spray it again. No, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to let the reins go at some point, you know? I think if you train well, and you could be all right though.
But you got to train good habits, because like it's all about sterilization. It's all about keeping, because you're basically creating a monoculture where the yeast can take hold in just the strain you want without any bad bacteria or anything else. And so if even a couple cells of something gets in there, it can spoil or ruin a batch.
Totally, and like you think about beer as like a, you know, it's a beer, it's a beverage, but it's actually like food products, so you gotta be safe.
Yeah, so yeah, we're obsessed. Like we regularly get people who come in even to the tap room and they're like, did you guys just open? This is really clean in here. Like, no, we just...
yeah, even before this interview, you were wiping down this table.
Yeah, we're like glorified janitors, basically. Yeah, we just clean everything.
All right, 2 more. All right.
This one's from my brother-in-law, Sean.
Yeah.
He asked, is there a market for non-alcoholic microbrews?
insanely large. With the success of like other non-alcoholic brands, it's something that we'd consider, but it's more of like in a consumer packaged goods format, like on store shelves at your HEB or something like that. And the equipment required to produce one of those and as a quality product is very, very expensive, and so a lot of people don't pursue it.
Pretty big barrier to entry.
And is the process to remove out the alcohol even more?
The specialized equipment for that is challenging.
To make it still taste like a good craft beer.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason. There's, even the big guys are getting into, the big macro breweries are getting into the NA realm.
Okay. Yeah, hop waters and different things. Yeah.
All right. Last questions from my buddy Randy, and I don't know if you can really fully answer this question, but what are your next steps to growing the company, and what are some of the obstacles in the way?
I think the next steps are, it's really, for us, I think it's reinvesting into some infrastructure in the back of house to make the process flow easier. We need more shelving. We got to go vertical with our storage because we're running out of space here. And then I think the biggest thing is really growing the team. Selling more beer is a huge part of it. And if we do get this new venture going, that'll be a big step in the right direction. But I can say that the ultimate goal here is, to buy our own facility, our own property, develop something that's truly a flagship tap room that we can produce at scale to get beer onto store shelves and out to all the restaurants in the city. And that's what we want to do. And
please tell me that property will be here in Austin.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
We're rooted in Austin, baby. Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you guys so much for this great time. And cheers. Yep.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.